Los Angeles, 1979. Backstage at the Troubadour. The walls hum with guitar feedback and muffled laughter. Bartenders clink bottles while stagehands adjust mic stands for the next act. Legends wander these halls like ghosts. Young Springsteen, late-night Dylan, maybe even Joni Mitchell scribbling lyrics in the corner. Suddenly a door slams. A young assistant rushes down the hall, pale as a ghost. Breathless, he bursts into the promoter's office. "She's gone," he says. Linda Ronstadt had just stormed out of the green room. No fight, no fanfare, just a single glance at the performance list. And then she vanished. Her name wasn't missing. It wasn't even in the wrong place. But someone else's was there, and that was enough. For years, no one knew the full story of what happened that night. Linda never told. She never needed to. She didn't do public outbursts or messy interviews. She wore her silence like armor. But now, for the first time, she's breaking that silence. In rare private reflections, Linda has revealed the names of 7 musicians she never forgave. 7 betrayals etched into the backbone of her career. These weren't casual fallouts or artistic disagreements. These were the kind of scars that shape a person and change their music. Some names will surprise you, some won't. But all of them played a role in defining Linda Ronstadt, not just as a voice, but as a force. In the early 1970s, Linda Ronstadt was a rising star. Her voice was undeniable, pure, powerful, unmistakably hers. And backstage, playing drums and singing backup, was a quiet, ambitious young man named Don Henley. Back then, he wasn't a rock god. He was Linda's employee, her bandmate, her support act, and briefly her friend. She gave him his first real break, taking him on tour, letting him find his voice in the echo of hers. He soaked up the momentum, the crowds, the opportunity. And soon after, he and Glenn Frey would form a band called the Eagles. You know how that story ends. But what most don't know is how quickly gratitude turned into arrogance. As the Eagles exploded, Henley's demeanor shifted. He no longer saw Linda as a mentor or even a peer. According to those close to her, he began treating her like a relic from his past. He skipped callbacks, brushed off her advice, made jokes behind her back about her old-school approach to music. The final straw came in 1975, backstage at the Universal Amphitheater. Henley, emboldened by his newfound success, sneered at Linda's musical direction. "You should stick to covers," he reportedly said. "Let real songwriters speak." That line burned through her like acid. Linda had spent her entire career pushing musical boundaries, crossing genres, breaking molds, singing her truth. And now, someone she had helped build was dismissing it all with a smirk. She didn't yell, she didn't argue. She simply revoked his tour credentials. On the spot. He wouldn't be backstage again, not at her shows. In the music business, few doors close that quickly. But when Linda shuts a door, it doesn't reopen. Henley's ego became legendary. Cocaine-fueled tantrums, late-night screaming matches, tales of entitlement whispered from one studio to the next. But to Linda, this wasn't just about ego. It was about betrayal, and worse, disrespect. She once called him a climber who lost his soul chasing fame. And from that moment on, he was out of her world. It's hard to overstate how chaotic 1968 really was. The summer of love had faded into something darker, more dangerous. Protests spilled into the streets. Artists were becoming activists. And the music? It was raw, loud, unapologetic. Linda Ronstadt was still clawing for space. She wasn't yet the reigning queen of genre crossover. She was young, untested, and determined. The Doors were at their peak, dangerous, mystical, unpredictable. And at a private after-party near the Whiskey A Go-Go, those two worlds collided. Jim Morrison spotted Linda from across the room, shirt half unbuttoned, eyes heavy with alcohol and whatever else was in his system. He swaggered through the crowd like a man possessed. Then, without warning, he pulled her onto a makeshift stage in the middle of the party. No rehearsal, no invitation. Linda was stunned. The room went quiet. Then Morrison leaned in, maybe trying to be charming, maybe just drunk, and tried to kiss her. She pulled away instinctively. He stumbled forward, lost his footing, and nearly knocked over her mic stand. The sound echoed through the room. Gasps, nervous laughter, confusion. Someone shouted, "What the hell was that?" There's no video, no official account. But the moment became legend, shared in whispers on tour buses, repeated in late-night interviews like some rock and roll ghost story. What made it worse was what came after. Months later, in a radio appearance, Morrison mocked her. He called her sweet but spineless, implied she wasn't built for the grit of rock and roll. "Pretty voice, forgettable presence," he said. Linda never fired back. She never needed to. Behind closed doors, though, she didn't hold back. To her inner circle, she called Morrison a brilliant wreck, a cautionary tale wrapped in charisma, someone who confused chaos with genius. What stung most wasn't the kiss, or even the insult. It was the symbolism. Morrison was everything wrong with the male-dominated music scene. Loud, messy, entitled, and in that moment, he turned Linda from an artist into a prop. She never forgot it. By 1976, Linda Ronstadt wasn't just a star, she was a force. But with that fame came responsibility, and Linda carried it with care. That's why she agreed to perform at a high-profile benefit concert for farm workers' rights. It wasn't just another show, it was a statement. She shared the stage with other icons of protest, including Neil Young, a man she admired deeply. His music was fearless, his activism uncompromising. On paper, they were kindred spirits. But that illusion shattered quickly. Backstage, Linda offered song suggestions to complement the protest theme. Neil shot them down, one by one. She offered to collaborate on a joint performance. He refused. He told her plainly her sound was too commercial for the cause. Later that night, after the show, he made it worse. Speaking to a small group of reporters, he reportedly said Linda wasn't built for protest, that she didn't have the edge, the fire, the grit. She left the venue in tears. For someone like Linda, who had fought so hard to be heard, not just as a woman but as a woman of conscience, it was devastating. She had believed they stood for the same ideals. That music could change minds, heal wounds. But to Neil, it seemed, her value ended at the charts. She never performed with him again. In private, she described him as loud in message, cruel in execution. His activism, she believed, meant little if it came from a place of arrogance. And from that day on, she vowed to choose her causes and collaborators more carefully. Frank Zappa was more than just a musician. He was an institution, avant-garde, unpredictable. A legend revered by critics and feared by many who worked with him. He didn't play by the rules. In fact, he didn't even acknowledge they existed. Linda Ronstadt, on the other hand, was fearless in a different way. She blended genres with ease: country, rock, Latin, pop. Her voice was precise, powerful, and deeply emotional. She respected artistry, but she also believed in intuition. She didn't need to be chaotic to be cutting edge. When the news broke that these two titans would collaborate in 1974, the music world buzzed with anticipation. It felt like a seismic shift in progress, something fresh, wild, and possibly historic. On paper, it was perfect. Zappa's eccentric brilliance paired with Linda's flawless vocals. But from the moment Linda stepped into the studio, the atmosphere felt strained. At first, she chalked it up to nerves. After all, this was Zappa's world, a place where logic often bent to madness. She approached the session with open-minded respect, offering suggestions on phrasing and vocal delivery. But every time she tried to contribute, Zappa shot her down. "Too sanitized," he said flatly when she offered to shift a note for tonal consistency. She tried again, suggesting a more emotional take on one verse. He scoffed. "Don't sugarcoat real music," he muttered, barely meeting her eyes. The studio fell into an awkward rhythm. Zappa controlled every second. The band watched quietly, unsure whether to intervene or stay invisible. Then, halfway through a run-through, he snapped. Zappa stopped the band, turned slowly to face the room, and said in a tone sharp enough to cut glass, "This is what happens when you hand real music to a pop singer." The air vanished from the room. Linda didn't flinch. She didn't yell. She didn't even look surprised. She simply put down her headphones, gathered her things, and walked out. The song was never finished. The collaboration never resumed. In fact, they never worked together, or even spoke again. Linda never aired the story in public, but those close to her remember the pain behind her silence. She told a friend later, "I walked into that room hoping to make something great. I left knowing some people mistake cruelty for genius." To her, Zappa had exposed something ugly that day, not just about himself, but about the industry. Even among the so-called visionaries, there were still men who saw a woman's voice as something to mold, not honor. Even the most avant-garde could fall victim to the same old power games. Zappa may have been brilliant, but brilliance without kindness, she believed, wasn't worth much in the long run. Why the need to tear her down? Why dismiss a fellow artist who'd never done anything but sing her truth? Costello didn't flinch. According to those nearby, he was drinking, detached, smirking. He shrugged, tossed out another offhand insult, then walked away. No explanation, no apology, just dismissal. Linda never engaged again. To her, Costello represented a dangerous shift in the industry, where cruelty masqueraded as cleverness, where authenticity was measured by how much venom you could spew. He was the voice of a generation that didn't want to build, only burn. Later, she said, he had the wit of a poet and the heart of a bully. And from that moment on, she made it a rule. Never waste your energy on those who mistake mockery for meaning. That day didn't destroy Linda, but it did draw a line in the sand. She had spent her life earning respect in a world that rarely offered it freely, and she wasn't about to let a half-drunk punchline from a punk poet rewrite her legacy. Some collaborations are born from buzz, others are born from respect. For Linda Ronstadt, her planned duet with Paul Simon in 1982 was very much the latter. She didn't pursue trends, she pursued truth. And in Paul, she saw a kindred spirit. A lyricist of rare depth, a composer who blurred the lines between folk, jazz, and poetry. His work with Simon and Garfunkel had left a permanent mark on American music, and Linda had long admired his ability to say so much with so little. Their voices, though textured differently, shared a vulnerability, the kind that could shatter walls or soothe wounds depending on the note. So when the opportunity came to collaborate on a song for Paul's upcoming project, Linda didn't hesitate. She stepped into the studio not as a guest star, but as an equal. Or so she thought. The first sign something was off came quietly. Paul was rigid, not in demeanor but in process. Everything was mapped, charted, measured. He had lyric sheets color-coded by emphasis. He counted beats aloud under his breath during takes. Every syllable, every breath had to align with his vision perfectly. Linda, by contrast, came from feel. She sang like she breathed. She didn't calculate phrasing, she embodied it. She shaped her interpretations in real time, letting the music lead the emotion. That difference became the source of friction. During one of their early sessions, Paul stopped her mid-take. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. "Try it drier," he said. "Flatter on the vowel. Can you pull the vibrato back by half a second?" Linda adjusted, but the adjustments kept coming. It wasn't collaboration, it was correction. Still, she held on. She wanted this to work. But then came the rewriting, entire verses reworked between sessions, without discussion. Emotional arcs shifted, vocal cues restructured. At one point, Paul changed a line that Linda had grown deeply attached to, replacing it with something she found flat and impersonal. When she gently questioned it, Paul responded with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I just think this way serves the song better." The message was clear. His way was the only way. One afternoon, they attempted a full vocal pass. Linda sang her heart out, measured, warm, aching. The room fell quiet when she finished. Not out of awe, out of calculation. Paul leaned back, tapped his pencil against the music stand and said, "That was technically fine, but it didn't feel lived in." It was the final crack. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't storm out. She just stood there and realized this wasn't a collaboration. It was an extraction. What should have been a creative exchange had turned into an emotional audit. Every phrase she delivered was judged not on its honesty, but on whether it conformed to someone else's mold. The song was never released. The duet never completed. It faded from public knowledge, replaced by whispers in studio hallways and half-finished demo reels that would never see daylight. Linda never spoke about it publicly, not out of fear, but out of principle. But in private, she was honest. She said Paul treated her like a vessel, not a voice. Someone to be directed, not partnered with. And in doing so, he had taken something that should have been beautiful and stripped it of all joy. To this day, fans wonder what that song might have sounded like. Linda doesn't. She's content with what it became, a lesson, a reminder that even legends can misstep, that not all admiration translates into chemistry, and that even when you respect someone's art, you don't owe them your spirit. After that experience, she quietly made herself a promise. Never again would she lend her voice to a project that didn't respect it. And Paul Simon? He faded from her orbit, not with a bang, but with a silence she never broke. Because sometimes silence is the clearest answer of all. 7 musicians, 7 betrayals. Not all of them screamed across headlines. Some never even made it past the studio door. But each one left a mark, personal, painful, and permanent. So why now? Why share these stories after decades of silence? Linda Ronstadt has never been the kind of artist to chase gossip or settle scores. She didn't need to. Her voice did the work. Her music was her legacy. But sometimes silence becomes a weight, and telling the truth isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming the narrative. These aren't stories of bitterness. They're stories of boundaries. They're reminders that even the strongest voices can be drowned out in rooms full of ego. That talent doesn't protect you from being underestimated. That kindness isn't weakness. And most of all, they show what Linda Ronstadt was really made of. Not just pitch-perfect notes, but quiet power. Because in the end, her strength wasn't just in the songs she sang. It was in the silence she chose to break. Which of these stories shocked you the most? And do you think Linda was right to keep quiet all those years? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more untold music history and iconic moments, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We'll see you next time.